Hi there, I'm Dr. Omar Akhtar, and in this video, I'm going to talk about reflections on 10 years as a physician. Now, if you've ever seen any of my videos, my intention has always been to provide as much information as I can in those videos, and I never tend to be interested in kind of opening up on my personal life, personal side of things, outside of kind of the medical information and medical knowledge that I want to provide. But in this video, I thought I'd do something a little bit different since July of 2024 is going to mark the 10-year anniversary of me being a physician here in this country because I started residency in July of 2014. So I thought I'd take a video for whoever might be interested and provide insights and a reflection for myself as well on my last 10 years and some thoughts that I've had on the journey along the way. So I'm going to try to make this just raw, unscripted thoughts. In my other videos, a lot of them tend to be just focused on, again, providing accurate medical information without too much extra, let's say. Um, so, with that, I wanted to provide that insight. So, I started life as a physician here in the US in 2014 in July, as I mentioned. This was after I graduated from medical school back home in Pakistan, which is my country of origin. And I moved here and started residency in internal medicine. So I'm an internist by training. And for those of you who might be completely new to medicine, internal medicine is kind of the hospital doctor, the inpatient doctor, or the hospitalist, as they're known, who is generally rounding on you in the hospital, coordinating care, and so on. So that's how I did my training. And a little background about how I got into this field. When I started doing medicine, then I basically, at the end of medical school, you have to choose a specialty or at least an initial specialty to go into. And some people know from the start that they're very interested in, for example, surgery, gynecology, psychiatry, or any of the other major fields there are. For me, I didn't have a particular interest in each of these or in one particular area. So I never really specialized into one thing. And I always thought that practicing in the hospital was kind of what I knew the best. And so when I applied for medical school, it was internal medicine. And internal medicine is it's not a it's I would say it's not one of the tougher specialties in terms of the surgical specialties require a lot of time, a lot of a lot more hours, a lot more physical labor, if you will. Internal medicine tends to be more focused just on a lot of times the intellectual aspect of things, thinking things through, differential diagnosis, the thought process around medications, all of that stuff. So the diagnostician, if you will. Um, so that's kind of how I had chosen internal medicine. And I started in a hospital in New York City called New York Presbyterian Queens. And that hospital was really fantastic in terms of an experience because it was located in Chinatown in the Queens suburb. And it basically had an amalgam of so many different patients from so many different ethnicities. So you got to see a wide variety of disease processes and you got to see just a whole lot of things. Um, but in short, it was basically you spend a lot of time on the translator phone. You'd be talking to patients of different languages, different ethnic backgrounds, different religious backgrounds as well. And so it was definitely quite an experience. Um, at the same time, it was also very tough, not just in terms of the hours you put in. I think every resident understands that, but it was the system that you're working in. When you decide to do medicine, oftentimes as a young medical student, you're doing it with this altruistic desire to help people, right? That's kind of how the cliche is for medical doctors. And it's a cliche because a lot of times it is true. And I'll see a lot of these younger medical students and young residents and so on that are in that really altruistic phase, where they haven't seen a lot of times the reality of the system. And when they haven't seen that, they can oftentimes be blind to the negative side of things. So they'll have this really positive image of what medicine is like. Soon after you start residency and you start working, a lot of times you can see the difficult sides of the system, the hospital, the sometimes staff, all of the things that come within this system, insurance companies, difficult patients, families, all those things that you have to balance. So for me, I think early on in residency, that's what I had started to see. And coming from Pakistan, you're coming from an area where, a lot of it is, patients are, a lot of them are very poor. They don't have a lot of means. You're limited on resources in general in most hospitals. So you have to really use the art of medicine, okay, which is something that's often lost in this system here in the US, the art of medicine. And when I say that, what I'm talking about is the skills to take a patient's history, do a thorough physical examination, and with all of the medical knowledge that you have to come to a diagnosis and then to treat that patient effectively. That is the art of medicine, and that is something that has been lost on, unfortunately, on a lot of physicians, practitioners in this system here. And the reason for that oftentimes tends to be two things. Number one is a heavy abundance in resources. So the ability to do no matter what test possible, blood test, radiological test, without necessarily a big care for the cost that there's going to be, because we have this third payer system in this country. And the second thing is this intense medical legal environment that we work in, where if you miss something, a small thing, you're going to be heavily penalized for it. And so because of that, you tend to practice very safe medicine, right? So even though you don't have a high suspicion of something, you're going to run that test. You're going to do that, whatever the test might be, because you have to rule out the issue to not get any legal trouble. Not that you think it's going to benefit the patient, or not that you think it's going to be financially beneficial. You have to do it because of the system you're living in. So I mention that because I think that a lot of that art of medicine gets lost in this country, in this system. And so early on, when I realized that, that's something that really threw me off of medicine here. And that's a reason that I realized that hospital medicine wasn't necessarily the path that I wanted to explore down the road. Now, I'm still involved in hospital medicine, more so part time, but it wasn't really where the passion was coming from. And as I advanced in my medical journey, what I realized is that I really enjoyed patients that I would often see in the clinic. So, clinic patients that I could get to spend more time with, because time was very limited in the hospital. You would go into the patient's room, you would see them for a few minutes, you would say hello, you would quickly chat about their issues, and then you would quickly lay out a plan and you'd be out of there because you have 20 patients to see. And you don't have enough time to see 20 patients, document, do all the things that are required to do. In residency, you have a lot of learning related stuff to do as well. So the point is that as I progressed in my medical journey, I realized that I enjoyed the interaction of the clinic more, seeing patients one on one, spending more time with them, and also giving them more of a holistic plan. And I say holistic plan because, again, our system is not designed to incorporate holistic modalities, not to incorporate diet, not to incorporate lifestyle, not to incorporate more natural treatments, herbs, and things like that. You have to be completely into naturopathic medicine, or different field. If you're in conventional, if you're a physician, if you're an MD doing more like internal medicine and these things, you're just not going to be talking about those things. You're not going to be prescribing those treatment modalities. That's something that I had the ability to do in the clinic, to sit and talk with a patient and say, hey, before we go on this medication, what if you make this dietary change? What if you make this lifestyle change? What if you decrease your stress? What if you work on X or Y or Z? And then we can decide that maybe you lose weight, maybe you'll just feel better. There's so many things that a positive diet and lifestyle can take care of. And conversely, there are so many things that patients are in the hospital for that are related to poor diet, obesity, or to alcoholism. Those tend to be the biggest reasons for patients to be admitted to the hospital for one reason or the other, because a lot of chronic illnesses stem from those things. In any case, that's what I enjoyed more during my residency training. And so when it came time to graduate out of residency, I knew that the natural progression would be to get a job in a hospital and do work as a hospitalist, right? But I knew that that's not where my passion lied. In all honesty, I have had multiple times, even in my residency and early on in my career, where I have actually thought about quitting medicine altogether. And that comes from a frustration of the system. Okay, the system and all of the frustration that it brings is something that has made me ponder that reality, something that you spent so much of your adult life doing in terms of advancing your career, in terms of pushing yourself to so much sacrifice to get into medicine, to progress and get through medical school, to finally get to graduate, to struggle and get through residency. And here you're getting out of residency after 8+ years of training, and you're finding yourself wanting to not do this anymore. And the reason oftentimes ends up being the system that really, really squeezes the physician and obviously the patient too, because I really don't think that the system cares about either the physician or the patient. That's something that we are now, is becoming pretty clear. And when I say the system, I'm not talking about a particular person. I'm not talking about a particular entity. I'm talking about this system that is created, that is an amalgamation of the insurance companies, the pharmaceutical companies, the food companies, everything, these big companies and essentially corporations and these types of almost like faceless entities that run our system. Those entities do not favor physicians or patients. And as a result, there's a lot of frustration on the patient side. We already know that. But there's a lot of frustration on the physician side. And I can personally attest to that from within the system, that I dealt with that. And so the thought of quitting, and this is not something that I really admit to publicly a lot of times, but it is something that I absolutely have felt. And um, is something that pushed me away from wanting to pursue hospital medicine from a really a passionate standpoint, and to do it with my whole heart. I think my whole heart was in doing more of a holistic type of practice, a more practice in which I can control things a lot better and not work for someone under this system. I can work for myself, kind of taking medicine back to the way it was many, many years ago. And that's getting tougher and tougher to do for physicians, because big corporations are buying up smaller physicians, and the ability to practice independent medicine is really, really declining. And I know a lot of physicians have taken back their, have tried to take this back, where they can get back to practicing medicine the way they want to, without being dictated by insurance companies, without being dictated by pharmaceutical companies. And to their credit, they are doing a lot of that, but it is a big uphill battle. Now, so when I graduated residency, immediately I knew I was pursuing a type of practice, my own practice, in which I could, practice the way I wanted, with a certain amount of freedom that I wanted. And that's what led me to create the practice that I now have, which is called Medina Medicine in Austin, Texas. And it's the practice in which is really, in many ways, given me that sense, that thing that I was looking for, the reason I went into medicine, the reason that I went and pursued this field, is exactly what it's giving me back, which is the connection with the patient, which is to get people better in a holistic manner as best as possible, and just enjoy practicing medicine. as much as possible. So it has given me that, and I'm very thankful for that. But what it has made tough is the fact that running a practice, just like running any business, is an incredibly difficult thing to do. And when you talk about it from a medical practice standpoint, it's obviously it's very tough, especially if you're not accepting insurance, which is again another reason that another thing to mention is that this is a cash pay practice. And a cash pay practice, the reason you do it is because if you're not dictated by the insurance companies, then you have the capability to set your own time, your own schedules, your own type of how you're practicing rather than being dictated by someone else. The downside, though, is that you then have to make a certain salary and succeed the business in your own way in a cash pay model, which is not easy to do. And so that's something that I think that I am. It's a constant evolution. It's something that I do struggle with on a day-to-day basis, because when you go into a business with a mission focus, a lot of times the profit can come second. You know, I've seen so many patients that I saw them, I didn't charge them anything because of various reasons, financial difficulties or other issues. However, I did that. So when you put profit second and the mission first, then I think that there can be a lot of struggles from the business standpoint. And a lot of times what that has made me do, though, is it has made me then not able to leave the hospital from the perspective of, you know, if you have a widely running practice, then you can also you can just practice in that way, not have to go like part-time in the hospital or whatever you may need to do. And I'm saying this from the perspective of just allowing myself a little bit of that vulnerability that I don't often do, um, because I think it's important for people to see those um, internal struggles that can be going on that you don't realize unless you speak of. So the practice started and has been constantly evolving, and you know, the focus, there's so many patients that I wanted to help: patients with GI issues, patients with female hormone issues, patients with autoimmune conditions. And that I wanted to be the physician that looked at you from head to toe and was able to handle pretty much everything that there is. Now you might think that that's pretty much what you're describing as a family physician, and you're right. However, what I'm talking about is not that you're kind of taking, you're coordinating care and you're doing the maintenance stuff, the screening, the urgent stuff. And then when a specialty issue arises, you immediately refer them to either a gastroenterologist, a cardiologist, a rheumatologist, endocrinologist, and so on. I wanted to be able to handle a lot of those things. And, you know, to a certain degree of credit, I have been, where my practice is not built around referrals to these different specialties. I'm trying to handle all of that in-house, minus if I need a procedure or something extremely specialized like that. But, you know, to take care of patients' hormones, to take care of a patient's diabetes and thyroid issues, to take care of a patient's GI issues. That's something that I've prided myself in doing. And that comes with a certain amount of training, even after you're done with your residency, because this is not stuff that you learn in residency ever. You don't get taught nutrition. You don't get taught, anything holistic. You don't get taught how does this system connect with this system and this system, and how does maybe some of your autoimmune issues arise in your gut and be affected by your gut. You know, you don't get this training. This training is not available. You get the training that nicely puts you in the system and to practice that way. You have to really break out of that mentality, break out of that mindset in order to in order to look at things differently. Once you have broken out of that mindset, however, you can never go back. That's the nice thing. You can never go back into that same mindset because you've just woken up from that system. So anyways, progressing into my medical practice, it's been quite a journey, I think, in terms of growing the practice, in terms of figuring out what I want to do. And I do feel like I'm back at that crossroads a little bit in terms of the next step. I felt like I had a clinic 1.0 and then a clinic 2.0 where I did chop and change some things. And then now I'm looking for that next step in evolution in terms of how that's going to be. That's a separate issue in terms of the specifications of that. But what I'm referring to basically is the practice model, the the charging model, how you're seeing patients, and so on. So all of that is something that is a work in progress. But I wanted to speak from it more from a physician standpoint, just with my journey. I also started a podcast, and it's called Better Medicine. And I started that around about 2 years or a little less than 2 years ago. And the goal there was to take all of those things that I was learning and that I was having discussions with other physicians and practitioners about, and to try and share that with the broader public. I was meeting different specialists, a lot of times more holistic specialists that were doing things in a very different way. They were treating, for example, autism in a different way, for example, gut issues in a different way. And to take them and their expertise and have a discussion, I was doing that anyways. And so I decided, why not just put this on camera and just allow it to be shared with so many people? So the podcast is called Better Medicine. It's available on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube. And that has been another area where I want to try and benefit patients in so many different ways. If you're struggling with something and you can listen to a discussion and be incentivized by that, be encouraged by that for a certain treatment, that's just, it's just the best thing that can happen. So that podcast was another part of my journey in the creative side of things, because I honestly feel like medicine and the medical system in this country, um, and just globally as well, just really stunts your creative side. It doesn't allow you to really grow in that sense. And a lot of that's why a lot of physicians, I think, once they get into their 30s and 40s, are then refinding their hobbies and their passions and their creative side, because it's not an area that they got to explore early on when they were so focused on medicine. So I was glad that I got to pursue that, and I was glad that I got to to do that, and just feel like it is a great creative outlet. And so it has taken a little bit of a blip in terms of regularity with episodes. I'm hoping to restart that, where we can keep giving good discussions and good viewpoints, keep educating the public, because there's so much out there in terms of misinformation around conventional health treatments, especially around hormones. That's the biggest area that I want to look to address, because of, again, how much women and men as well, but women especially, suffer with symptoms that aren't addressed properly in this kind of conventional system, for lack of a better word. So, um, in conclusion, I would say that my reflections of 10 years as a physician have been, there have been various ups and downs. I have wanted to always practice every single day that I do and see patients with a certain passion. And it takes a while to get to find out what that passion is. And more than that, it also takes a while sometimes to be adequately compensated for that passion. That's not easy. Um, and that's where the struggle can come in, and does come in a lot of times. So, and my message to patients is, the brutal reality of the situation is, every single time I am confronted with the healthcare system and I see patients in that system, whether a lot of times it's the ER, whether it's the hospital, whether it's urgent care, whether it's these large practices, primary care, and so on. Um, there are many good aspects to all of these. The ER, and obviously you need them because they're incredibly necessary in life-threatening situations and all of that stuff. However, I will say that the system as a whole, the system is not designed for the patient. It is not designed in the best interests of the patients. Why? Because there is a financial aspect behind it. And whenever there's a financial aspect behind it, unless it is correctly tempered with a certain um, morality and desire for ethical practice, which I believe that this country has lost for the most part, if it is not combined with that, then that side of money and profit and greed takes over. And what you're left with a system that does not favor patients. That doesn't mean physicians don't favor patients. That doesn't mean nurses are not, favoring patients. And there are incredible physicians and nurses and um, even ancillary staff and other people that work in hospitals that are doing an incredible job. But I'm not talking about individuals. I'm talking about the system. And so that's where patients have to advocate for themselves. That's where I'm trying my best as one person to day in, day out advocate for as many people that come across me and as many people that I can help in a holistic way as much as possible. I can't help everyone. I try. Um, I want to, um, but I think what ends up happening is that the more people I try to help, the more of myself I tend to lose then, because it's just not possible to do everything in every situation for everyone and then still keep aspects of your own mental health and well-being intact. So, so I think that was an adequate description of my last 10 years as a physician. I hope you found this insightful. If you have any thoughts, comments, questions, please leave them below. And I look to do more of these just casual talks where I can just talk about life as a physician and the inner workings of a physician without all of the other medical stuff. So I'll leave it at that, and thank you for listening.